Or you sign the sign-up sheet if you're willing to get a dispatch from me or from anyone on this panel saying, let's all write to the nation, let's all write to the Times or whatever your newspaper is. Let's do a letter-writing campaign. How many of you have ever written a letter on the subject of election integrity to any news outlet? Okay, a few people. Yeah, okay. All right, so what if everyone in the room did within a week or two? They are listening to their masters, the deep state actors. And remember, the deep state is after the profit of the 0.1%, the enrichment of them and the increased inequality in this country with all of its mortal results, as Dr. David Ansel has pointed out in The Death Gap, which is a wonderful book I just read. All right, so, and the complicity of the media has been one of the leitmotifs of this panel. And so, with great pleasure, I present our last speaker, who is a professor of media. His area of expertise, Marc Crispin Miller. He is a professor of media, culture, and communications at NYU, author of Boxed In, The Culture of TV, The Bush Dyslexicon, one of my favorites. Fooled Again, The Real Case for Electoral Reform, editor of Loser Take All, and a number of other books. Plus, he edits the collection called Forbidden Bookshelf, which is a republication collection of books that were suppressed because they offended the powers that be, and yet they had great truths to impart, including Douglas Valentine's book on the Phoenix Program. And we have Douglas Valentine's newer book called The CIA as Organized Crime, which you'll find on my bibliography. So, I present to you with great pleasure Professor Marc Crispin.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here. There's a few basic points I want to drive home. They've actually come up sort of indirectly today, but I think they bear repeating. First of all, we wouldn't be where we are at this moment. We wouldn't be faced with the clear prospect of either nuclear destruction or a slower death through excessive climate change, if not for the fact that 2016 was the year of serial election theft. Okay? First, the nomination for the Democratic Party, the presidential nomination, was stolen from Bernie Sanders through the usual insidious combination of rampant vote suppression and computerized election fraud. That's the 1-2 punch of election theft. I like to recommend reading when I speak. If you want chapter and verse on how the nomination was stolen from Bernie Sanders, I strongly recommend a study called Democracy Lost from Election Justice USA. It's over 100 pages. It goes through everything that happened, the theft of the 11 primaries from Bernie Sanders, the vote suppression carried out visibly by the Democratic Party, with the computerized election fraud probably carried out by the Republicans, because that's their thing, they're expert at that, and they control the companies. There's probably a rare moment of bipartisan agreement that the two parties got together and fucked Bernie Sanders to make sure that Hillary Clinton would be the nominee. Okay? That happened here in the city of New York. In Brooklyn alone, 120,000 people tried to vote and showed up and found that they'd been eliminated from the polls. I'm sure some of those people are here today. So, you know, she wasn't the democratically chosen nominee for the Democratic Party. A lot of people know this. Not so many people know that there's considerable evidence, thanks to Jill Stein, that Donald Trump didn't win on Election Day through the same combination of rampant vote suppression and computerized election fraud in the swing states, in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Some of the most eloquent evidence for that claim is the fact that the Republican Party did everything they could, as Jill just noted, first to sabotage the recounts and then successfully suing to shut them down. Why would they do that if Donald Trump was actually elected by a majority of voters in those states? Okay? I mean, it seems to me pretty clear. It would kill him to hear me say this, and then that would kill me, I suppose, that he wasn't actually elected. Okay? So we are where we are now because our elections have been stolen from us throughout last year. And yet, interestingly enough, the liberal media and the left press, which collectively herniated themselves deploring the sudden rise of Donald Trump to the presidency, something that took even him by surprise, right? Remember he went to bed early on Election Day because he figured he could get up and start building his TV network and making more money, you know? This same media system refused to raise a single question as to whether or not he actually was elected. This was a forbidden question. This is a possibility for raising which Jill Stein was pilloried. You don't bring that up. You don't suggest that kind of thing. You never, ever imply that our elections can be stolen. That's simply wrong. And on this, the entire media system seemed to agree. Right? You don't bring that up. It's wrong. Okay? Now, the fact that most Americans are unaware that Donald Trump was probably not elected has everything to do with the fact that this event is in a relatively small room, and it should be in a much bigger room. This should be a plenary. Okay? The left ought long since to have seized this issue as one of its most important. And the theft of elections in this millennium, right, starting with 2000, should be now as iconic as the efforts of the civil rights movement in the 60s to register people to vote in the South. Everybody knows about all that. They know about the police dogs. They know about Bull Connor. They know about the nightsticks and the fire hoses. Everybody knows about that. Everybody sort of ritually bows down before that hallowed image of brave activism for voting rights. But somehow when it comes to the theft of the elections in this millennium, which has had an even more destructive effect because it's led to where we are today, there's a kind of blank in people's minds, right? And that's because the entire press, the entire free press of the United States has with one voice shouted down any attempt to talk about this. And I have to say, since this is the left forum, that the left has a lot to answer for when it comes to the repression of this issue. Okay? Some of our most revered leftist figures, some of the brightest stars in the leftist firmament, have been very pointed in denying that this is even an issue at all. You know, Noam Chomsky has denied that this is an important issue, just as he did with the Kennedy assassination, and just as he did with 9/11. Alexander Coburn, busted his lexicon looking for pejorative words to use against people trying to get him to talk about the theft of the elections in 2000 and 2004. Their ravings clutter my inbox every morning. I remember he wrote that. Their ravings. That's people like us. Our ravings. We rave. We have to rave. And it didn't
start out by raving.
No, we didn't. That's right. They drove us to rave. Right? Yeah, exactly. Well, the fact is, Michael Moore went out of his way after the, as far as I'm concerned, flagrant theft of the 2004 election. Flagrant, as Bob said. He went out of his way to say it wasn't stolen. You know, Kerry actually lost basically because he didn't listen to me. That's what Michael Moore said. He didn't listen to me. He should have run more to the left. Then he would have won. Right? We all know how that works out. Okay? The fact is, the left, the nation, Mother Jones, Salon, you name it, all of them have long since been laughing this issue off, calling it conspiracy theory, right? Making us feel like we're nuts for worrying about it, right? And look where we are now. I have to say it again. Look where we are now. We are where we are now thanks to them. And it clearly has to do with the fact, I'm going to jump right down the rabbit hole that Joel opened up. It clearly has to do with the fact that our entire press has been compromised by what we call the deep state. Okay? It has. And I'm long past caring about what people call me when I say things like that. I really don't give a shit anymore. And I have to note that the Left Forum just recently banned 4 panels on the deep state. You know this, right? Because some people claim that some of the panelists were anti-Semites, but that means that 4 panels on 9/11 were banned, were canceled, right? So much for free speech and so on, and free inquiry. But this, I have to say, that what we're really talking about here, ultimately, is not just about the mechanics of running elections. I think that the solution to this problem is really very simple. It's a matter of making voter registration automatic for every citizen on their 18th birthday. Period. Okay, you're 18, you're registered. Period. It's about banning the use of computerized voting and vote counting systems and forbidding the participation of private companies in our elections. Okay? How complicated is that? How hard is that? Not hard at all. Make Election Day a national holiday. Right? Just things like that. Right? That can be done. It can be done. It's not hard. As they say, it's not rocket science. Thank God. Right? The problem here is not just a problem having to do with elections and the mechanics of elections. It's really an epistemological problem. It's a problem of how we know what we know. It's a problem that has to do with the media. It's the problem of having a media system that is controlled by interests that consistently tell the American people, who are you going to believe? Us or your own eyes?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Who are you going to believe? You're going to believe us and the CIA, which tells us what to say? Or are you going to believe your own experience? Right? We say that Putin invaded Ukraine and seized Crimea. We say this. We say there's a civil war in Syria, a brutal civil war. Assad is murdering his own people, and moderate rebels are trying to bring him down. We say all these. We say that vaccines are all safe and necessary, right? Oh, I really stepped into it now. We say that mandatory vaccination is a good thing for you. You should definitely let your kids get all those shots, even, however many they may be and however young your kids may be, because we say that it's good for you and you don't have any choice in the matter, right? What I'm saying is that there's a whole menu of issues on which the press is functioning on behalf of interests other than the public interest. And this blackout on the crucial existential threat posed by corrupt elections, this blackout is very much a part of that, you see? So what we're really talking about is the need not just to democratize our election system as a way to reclaim, or I should say discover, American democracy at long last. It's not just that. It's also a matter of overcoming our dependence on a media system that's dangerously corrupt. Okay, and I want to make one last point that's kind of upbeat, because I haven't heard many of those today. All right? As a professor, I have to say that my experience in the classroom talking about issues like these issues has been extremely exhilarating for me. Because I have found increasingly over the last decade or so that my students are less and less daunted by the conspiracy theory meme. It does not intimidate them the way it intimidates us older people. And this has everything to do with the fact that they are used to digital media, right? They're used to being able to summon up the other side of the story just by, pressing a few buttons. So that the other side of the story, which used to require a road trip. You'd have to go find people and talk to them and interview them and visit distant libraries and so on. You don't have to do that anymore, see? You can actually just go online and as long as you learn to tell the difference between bullshit and well-sourced, clearly argued material, you're able to discover a tremendous amount that is staggering when you see how completely unrelated the official story usually is to what's actually going on. A lot more people get it than we think. Just last night, I was binge watching House of Cards. Right? This is amazing. Okay? This is amazing. Have you seen it? It's breathtaking. It is, the way the Underwoods steal the election is what happened in Florida in 2000 and in Ohio in 2004, kind of mixed together, barely disguised, The only problem with it is that it's just the Underwoods. There's no intelligence community behind them. All right, so poetic license. But there's Scandal, which, a few years ago dealt pretty honestly with what happened in Ohio, although it made the perpetrators look heartsick and conscience-stricken by having done it, a little unrealistic. But the fact is, that some of them were, rest in peace. Oh, speaking of Mike Connell, there was a very scary dark side to this whole thing. There's some people who've lost their lives over this battle. Mike Connell, just go do a search on him if you don't know the story. Athen Gibbs, Gibbs, Raymond Lemme, Lemme. These are people who were clearly done in because they got on the wrong side of this issue. And the only Democratic politician who has ever spoken publicly about the theft of his or her proper victory, the only one, not Al Gore, not John Kerry, certainly not Hillary Clinton, was Don Siegelman of Alabama.
And it also wasn't Bernie Sanders.
And look what happened to him, right? He was a political prisoner until, thank God, recently he finally got out. You want to, okay, some of you may wonder what the hell I'm talking about. That's the problem with living in a system like this, where the most important truths are often way, way off in the weeds somewhere. That's precisely the problem we have to solve here. First of all, we have to learn how to think independently of what we're constantly being told on subject after subject. We have to brave the derision, the ostracism that we often experience when we tell our friends and loved ones the things that we have discovered, because people often do not want to hear this stuff. But having moved beyond that, we really have to start to think about doing something pretty radical about dealing with our media system, just as I believe we should take radical steps to solve the election problem. Jonathan and I have talked about this. In some precincts, people should just, seize those op scans, just grab them, and refuse to give them up. Why not? That seems to me to be, fairly direct action that would maybe do some good. Eventually, we're going to have to take steps like these, but for the time being, we simply have to be rational, skeptical, genuinely skeptical, absolutely committed to discovering the truth wherever it takes us. And if we do that, if we can do that and get others to do it, I really still believe, after all these many years of fighting this fight and exhausting myself, as my fellow panelists understand, I still believe it's possible, and I hope you do too. Thanks.